Marcus's huge hand blocked the entrance like a concrete barrier. "I'm sorry, darling. This event is for VIP guests only. I think you got the wrong door." His voice carried that condescending tone, that fake smile that screamed, "You don't belong in this world." Laura Mitchell, 42, stood in front of the red carpet at the Grand Sapphire Hotel. She held her bag with both hands, trying to control her breathing. The navy blue dress she wore was simple but dignified. Her plus-size body drew attention not because of her clothes, but because of the way Marcus looked at her, as if she were an intruder. All around, other guests passed by without being questioned. Men in Italian suits, women with jewelry that reflected the lights from the entrance. Nobody stopped. Nobody was interrogated. Just her. "I have an invitation," Laura replied, looking in her bag. Marcus crossed his arms, further increasing his intimidating presence. He exchanged a complicit look with another security guard next to him, who smiled sideways. "Of course you do," he said, dragging his words. "Let me guess. Did you win a draw? Social media promotion?" Muffled laughter came from behind him. Two event employees watched the scene as if it were free entertainment. Laura took a deep breath. It wasn't the first time. It was never the first time. She pulled out the printed invitation and handed it to Marcus. He took it with disdain, barely looked at it, and handed it back. "This one looks fake. The impression is a bit homemade, you know." "It's not fake," Laura replied, keeping her voice steady. "I was invited by the event organizers." "And even?" Marcus tilted his head, feigning surprise. "Because look, this type of gala is for people who, let's say, match the environment. Do you understand what I mean?" He pointed discreetly into the ballroom, where slender models milled about with glasses of champagne, impeccably suited executives chatted in exclusive groups, and New York's elite pretended not to notice the drama at the door. Laura felt heat rising up her neck. It wasn't anger, it was pure humiliation. 3 years ago, she was in a Brooklyn boardroom, pitching a software project for a startup that was barely making rent. Nobody believed her, nobody invested. Everyone looked at his body before looking at his ideas. But Laura always had one thing that arrogant people never understood: strategic patience. "I've worked in the technology field for 20 years, she said, her voice still calm. "I was invited because I am a qualified professional, not because I match anything." Marcus let out a short, dry laugh. "Look, no offense, okay? But I'm here to avoid embarrassment. And honestly, I think you'll feel more comfortable at another type of event. You know, something more casual." He made a vague gesture with his hand as if he were swatting away a fly. Laura felt her chest tighten. Around, some people began to stop and observe. Nobody intervened. They just watched, as if it were part of the show. A woman in high heels walked past Laura and whispered to her friend, "Poor thing. Why does she insist on coming to these places?" The friend replied, laughing softly, "You must think no one notices." Laura heard everything, every word, every laugh, and something inside her, something that had been building for years, finally solidified. "I'm not leaving," she said, looking directly at Marcus. Marcus took a step forward, invading her space. His height was intimidating, the posture even more so. "I didn't ask, dear. I'm asking you, politely, not to create a scene. You're really hindering the entrance of the guests." It was at that moment that something changed in Laura's eyes. She didn't look away. He didn't lower his head. He didn't back down. Instead, she gave a small smile, not one of submission but one of someone who knows a secret that no one else knows. "Okay," she said calmly. "I'll solve this another way." Marcus frowned, confused by the change in tone. Laura took her cell phone out of her bag and quickly typed something. His fingers moved with precision, as if he were executing a plan that had been in place for weeks. Then he looked at him once more. "I hope you're prepared for what comes next." Marcus laughed, but this time the sound was forced. "Ready for what? Who are you going to call? For your lawyer?" Laura didn't respond, just waited. All around, the crowd grew. More people stopped to watch. Some were already holding their cell phones ready to film. A man in a gray suit commented loudly, "She won't give up. How clueless." Another agreed. Security should have called the police already. Marcus crossed his arms again, now displaying an air of absolute superiority. He was enjoying the attention, enjoying being seen as the guardian of order. "Look, I don't want to be rude," he said, increasing the tone for everyone to hear. "But there are places for everyone, you know, and this one is not yours." Laura remained silent, looking at the phone screen. 30 seconds later, Marcus's cell phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and paled. It was a message from the general manager of the event. "Let Mrs. Mitchell come in immediately. She's the new main sponsor." Marcus read, reread. He looked up at Laura incredulously. That can't be right." Laura tilted her head, still smiling. "Want to check it out again?" Security swallowed dry. His hands began to tremble around his cell phone. He looked at his colleagues, who now seemed equally lost. Around, the curious looks now turned to him. The high-heeled woman who had moved from Laura seconds ago stopped laughing. His face was pale. The man with a gray suit opened his mouth, but no word came out. Marcus tried to speak, but his voice failed. I didn't know. Laura stepped forward, now occupying the space that was her before. You didn't know why I didn't want to know, she said, her voice low but sharp. You looked at me and decided who I was, decided what I deserved. Marcus retreated, unable to support her look. Laura took a deep breath and passed him, stepping on the red carpet as if that had always been his place. Behind her, Marcus stood holding her cell phone as the crowd began to whisper. And Laura Mitchell, the woman he tried to expel, simply moved on, because for the first time that night, she no longer needed to prove anything. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. The following turn will make you jaw drop. Try again. Laura entered the main hall of the Grand Sapphire Hotel and was greeted by a sea of looks. They were not glances of admiration. They were judgmental looks. The hall was decorated with crystal chandeliers who seemed to cost more than most people earned in a year. Round tables covered by impeccable white towels, flower arrangements that exuded expensive perfume, and in the center of Tudo, an illuminated stage where soon speakers of New York's most exclusive technology event would go up to talk about innovation, leadership, and future. Laura walked slowly, keeping her posture erect. Each step was calculated. She knew she was being observed. I knew the whispers had already started. A blonde woman, in a fair red dress, turned to her friend and said, without lowering her voice, "Seriously, they let her get in?" The friend answered, disguising a laugh. "It must be something of forced inclusion. You know how it is today." Laura heard, pretended not to. She located her table, number 12, right in front of the stage, a privileged position, exactly where the main sponsors were. As he approached, 3 men in suit were already sitting. Everyone stopped talking as soon as they saw her. The older one, with gray hair and a watch that could buy a car, frowned. "I think you're at the wrong table," he said, not even greeting her. Laura smiled politely and showed the identification card she had received by email. "Table 12. This is my place." The man took the card, examined with suspicion, and returned without saying anything. Just pushed the chair to the side with a sudden gesture as if doing a favor. Laura sat down. The silence on the table was embarrassing. No one introduced himself. No one offered conversation. She took a glass of water and drank slowly, ignoring the discomfort they tried to impose. On the other side of the hall, Marcus was still at the entrance. He had been called in by the event manager, a thin glasses named Richard who seemed visibly annoyed. "What happened out there?" Richard asked, crossing his arms. Marcus tried to explain himself, but the words were run over. I was just doing my job. She didn't seem, the kind of person who comes for this type of event." Richard clenched his teeth. "The type of person? Marcus, do you know who she is?" Marcus shook his head, still confused. Richard sighed, as if he was dealing with a child. "Laura Mitchell, founder of Novatech Solutions, the company that is sponsoring half of this event. She has just signed a $3 million contract with us." Marcus's face lost all the color. $3 million? Richard nodded impatiently. "And you humiliate her in front of everyone. Congratulations, Marcus, you may have just cost my job." Marcus swallowed dry. His hands trembled. "I didn't know. She didn't seem—" "What didn't she look like?" Richard interrupted, the sharp voice. Finish the sentence." Marcus was silent. Richard turned his back and walked toward Laura's table, trying to control damage. Meanwhile, on stage, M-Star of Ceremonies began the presentation. "Good night, everyone. Welcome to Summit of Innovation and Leadership 2025. Today, we are pleased to receive some of the brightest minds in Silicon Valley and all over the country." Educated applause echoed through the hall. Laura clapped mechanically, but her attention was elsewhere. She watched the people around, watched how they interacted, as they greeted with wide smiles and firm hand grips, as they formed their small circles of power, and how no one approached her. A waiter passed with a tray of canapes. He offered everyone at Laura's table, except for her. She raised her hand politely. "Can I get one, please?" The waiter seemed surprised, as if he didn't realize she was there. He offered the tray with a forced smile and moved on. The gray-haired man next to Laura murmured something for his colleague. "It must be starving." Muffled laughs. Laura took a deep breath. It was not anger. It was tiredness of having to prove every day that it deserved to be anywhere. Richard finally arrived at table 12. He leaned toward Laura with an exaggerated, clearly forced smile. "Mrs. Mitchell, what a pleasure to have her here. I hope everything is well. I apologize for the incident outside." Laura looked at him calmly. "Incident?" Richard cleared his throat, nervous. "The security guard, he made a mistake. It was already oriented. Laura repeated without emotion. Yes, we guarantee that this won't happen again. Laura nodded slowly. I understand. Richard expected more. A complaint. A requirement. Something he could solve to save the situation. But Laura just turned her face back to the stage, completely ignoring it. Richard stood there, not knowing what to do. After a few embarrassing seconds, he walked away. On stage, the master of ceremonies continued. And now let's welcome our main speaker of the night, CEO of Quantum Enterprises, Jonathan Hayes. The audience applauded, enthusiastically. Jonathan Hayes took the stage with a confident smile. He was tall, tanned, with a flawless navy suit, the kind of man who seemed to be born to be under spotlight. He began his speech with a joke, tearing up the easy laughs from the audience. Do you know what is the difference between a successful entrepreneur and a failed entrepreneur? He paused, smiling. The failed is still trying to prove that it deserves to be here. More laughs. Laura didn't laugh. Jonathan continued, talking about leadership, vision, and how he had built his company from scratch. Each word was loaded with arrogance disguised as inspiration. In the business world, you need to have a presence. You need to be seen. If no one takes you seriously when you enter a room, you have already lost. Laura crossed her arms, watching him carefully. Jonathan made eye contact with several people from the audience while talking. When his eyes passed through Laura, he paused by a fraction of a second, and then he smiled. It was not a smile of recognition, it was a smile of disdain. He continued the speech, but something in his energy had changed. And see, I know that nowadays everyone talks about inclusion, giving opportunities to all kinds of person, but in the end the market is cruel. He doesn't care about feelings. It connects to results. The audience applauded. Laura remained motionless. When Jonathan ended, he came down from the stage under warm applause. People got up to greet him. He circulated through the hall like a celebrity, squeezing hands, laughing, posing for photos. And then he approached the table 12. He greeted the gray-haired man with a firm handshake. Robert, good to see you here. Greeted the other two men with the same energy. And then his eyes fell on Laura. He paused. And you are? Laura reached out. Laura Mitchell, Novatech Solutions. Jonathan squeezed her hand briefly, almost mechanically. Oh yes, I heard. You do software, right? Artificial intelligence solutions for Fortune 500 companies. Jonathan nodded but was already looking to the side, looking for someone more interesting to talk. Cool, good luck with that, and he walked away. Laura watched as he left, laughing loudly with a group of executives. She took the cell phone and checked a message. It was from Sarah, her partner and best friend. Is everything right there? Do you need me to go? Laura typed back, all under control, just a little more. She kept her cell phone and looked around the hall. No one knew. No one had an idea of what was about to happen, because in exactly 15 minutes Laura Mitchell would go on that stage, and everything would change. Laura came out discreetly from table 12 and walked toward the side corridors of the hall. No one noticed, or no one cared. She followed a lighted corridor, minimalist lamps, until you reach a private room at the back of the hotel. The sign on the door said, VIP room, speakers only. Laura knocked 3 times. The door opened. On the other side was Sarah Chen, 38. Laura's partner at Novatech Solutions. She wore a black blazer and held a tablet as if it were an extension of her arm. His face was serious, but his eyes sparkled with restrained energy. Are you well? Sarah asked as soon as Laura entered. Laura closed the door behind her and took a deep breath. I am just tired of it all. Sarah placed her hand on her friend's shoulder. 15 more minutes. Afterwards, you will never need to prove anything to these people again. Laura smiled, but it was a tired smile. I hope you're right. Sarah pulled out a chair and sat next to Laura. Let's go over everything again. Do you have the presentation ready? Laura nodded and took out her own tablet from her bag. On the screen was the title of the talk she would give in a few minutes. The Future of Artificial Intelligence. How Innovation Comes from Unexpected Places. Sarah scrolled through the slides, checking every detail. Perfect. Updated numbers, clean graphs, success stories. You will destroy them. Laura looked at the screen, but her mind was elsewhere. Sarah, do you think anyone out there knows who I really am? Sarah paused and looked at her friend. Some know, most don't care. They saw their name on the invitation. They saw Novatech Solutions, but they didn't connect the dots. For them, you are just another unknown businesswoman who managed to buy a space. Laura let out a bitter laugh. And Jonathan Hayes? Did he know? Sarah rolled her eyes. That arrogant idiot, he didn't even research. I bet he thinks Novatech is some irrelevant startup. Laura shook her head. He'll find out soon. Sarah smiled, this time mischievously. Yes, and it will be beautiful to watch. At that moment, the door opened again. A man entered. He was tall, thin, with round glasses and disheveled hair. He was carrying a battered backpack and looked completely out of place at an event like this. Sorry I'm late, he said, panting. Traffic was impossible. Laura got up and went to him. Daniel, I'm glad you arrived. Daniel Carter, 29, was Novatech's chief engineer. He had an absurdly high IQ and an almost supernatural ability to solve complex problems. But socially, he was a disaster. I would rather spend my time with codes than with people. He pulled a laptop from his backpack and opened it on the table. I finished the adjustments you asked for. The live demo is ready. Sarah approached, curious. Liv? Laura, you didn't tell me that. Laura smiled for the first time since she entered the room. I wanted to keep it as a surprise. Daniel turned the laptop so they both could see. On the screen, there was a program running, an artificial intelligence interface with a futuristic design. This, Daniel explained, adjusting his glasses, is the beta version of our new generative AI system. It can process data in real time, learn from human interactions, and create personalized solutions in seconds. Sarah's eyes widened. Are you going to demonstrate this on stage? Laura nodded. In front of everyone, including Jonathan Hayes. Daniel smirked, which was rare. This will blow their minds. Sarah crossed her arms, thoughtful. Okay, but are you sure? If something goes wrong? If the system crashes or it won't stop? Daniel interrupted confidently. I tested it 50 times. It's perfect. Laura looked at the two of them. Sarah, the strategist. Daniel, the technical genius. They were his team, your real family. Thank you, she said, her voice soft. For being here, for believing. Sarah blinked, holding back emotion. Always, Laura, always. Daniel, uncomfortable with feelings, went back to working on his laptop. Okay, but we need to synchronize this with the hotel's projection system. I will need access to their server. Sarah took out her cell phone. I've resolved it. I have contact with the event's IT technician. As Sarah left to make the call, Laura and Daniel were silent for a few seconds. Are you nervous? Daniel asked, without taking his eyes off the screen. Laura thought before answering. No, just tired of being underestimated. Daniel finally looked at her. You know you're the smartest person I know, right? Laura smiled. Thank you, Daniel. It's not a compliment. It's a statistical fact. She laughed. It was exactly the kind of thing Daniel would say. Sarah returned to the living room, putting away her cell phone. Resolved. The technician will give you full access to the projection system. You can connect the laptop directly. Daniel waved his thumbs up, already diving into the final adjustments. Laura looked at the clock on the wall. There were 10 minutes left before his presentation. 10 minutes to change everything. She took out the tablet and reviewed the slides. You but last time. Each word, each image, each number. Everything had to be perfect, because it wasn't just a presentation. It was a statement. Sarah sat next to her again. Do you remember that day 3 years ago when we almost gave up? Laura nodded. How could I forget? Sarah smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes. We had presented the project to 12 investors. 12, and everyone said no. Laura closed her eyes, remembering. They didn't say no. They laughed. They said we had no market credibility. Sarah added, translation. You didn't look like they expected from a CEO. Laura opened her eyes. But we didn't give up. No, Sarah agreed. We came back, worked twice, and found someone who believed. Laura smiled. And now we're here. And now, Sarah said, getting up, you'll show them all what they lost. Daniel closed the laptop with a satisfied click. All ready? The demonstration is synchronized. When you press the button, the system will run live on the auditorium screen. Laura took a deep breath. Perfect. Sarah looked at her proudly. You were born for that, Laura. Don't let anyone make you forget that. Laura got up, took the tablet, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she looked back. Sarah and Daniel were there side by side, looking at her with absolute confidence. And for the first time that night, Laura felt she wasn't alone. She opened the door and returned to the main hall. The audience was distracted, talking to each other, taking drinks, laughing. No one paid attention to the empty stage, but in 5 minutes, everyone would be looking. And Laura Mitchell, the woman they ignored, humiliated, and underestimated, would finally have his voice heard. Because what no one knew, neither Marcus nor Jonathan Hayes nor the woman in high heels nor the man in a gray suit, was that Laura was not there to ask for permission. She was there to show exactly who drove. The ceremony master took the stage with a professional smile. Ladies and gentlemen, the time came for everyone we were waiting. It is with great pleasure that I present our final night speaker, the founder and CEO of Novatech Solutions, Laura Mitchell. The hall was silent. It was not a silence of anticipation. It was a silence of confusion. Several people exchanged glances. Some frowned, trying to remember where they had heard that name. Jonathan Hayes, who was sitting at a table near the stage, stopped drinking champagne and looked at his colleague next door. Novatech? I never heard of it. The colleague shrugged. It must be some small startup that bought a presentation slot. Jonathan laughed softly. Pathetic. At the entrance of the hall, Marcus watched from afar. His hands were still shaking. He knew exactly who Laura Mitchell was, and I knew he had made the biggest mistake in his career. Laura took the stage with steps firm. She didn't run. No hurry. He walked with the dignity of those who always knew that this moment would arrive. When she arrived at the center of the stage, she stopped and looked at the audience. Hundreds of faces stared at her, some curious, other bored. Many still talked to each other, ignoring her completely. Laura took the microphone and adjusted the height. "Good night," she started, her calm, controlled voice. "My name is Laura Mitchell, and I know exactly what many of you are thinking now." The audience was silent. Some stopped talking. Laura smiled lightly. "You are wondering, who is this woman? Why is she here? Did she buy this space?" Nervous laughs echoed through the hall. Laura continued, without losing his tone, "And the answer is, yes, I bought this space, but not the way you imagine." She paused, leaving the suspense in the air. 3 years ago, I was sitting in a meeting room in Brooklyn, presenting an artificial intelligence project for investors, 12 investors to be exact, and everyone said no. The audience began to pay attention, not because the project was bad, not because the numbers didn't close, but because, in the words of one of them, I didn't have the expected market credibility. Laura looked straight at Jonathan Hayes. Translation: I didn't look like what they expected from a CEO. Jonathan looked away, uncomfortable. Laura took a deep breath and continued. "So I came home. I rewrote the project. I worked 18 hours a day for 6 months, and I found an investor who saw beyond my appearance, someone who saw the potential of what we were building." She pushed a button on the tablet, and the screen behind her lit. Charts, numbers, projections. Today, Novatech Solutions has contracts with 15 companies from Fortune 500. Our annual revenues are $85 million, and we just closed a round of $50 million investments to expand our PI platform of generative IA. The audience began to murmur. Some leaned forward in the chairs. Jonathan Hayes stopped smiling. Laura pushed another button. A video started playing on the screen. It was a customer testimonial. The CEO of one of the largest logistics companies in the country. "Novatech Solutions has revolutionized our operation. The AI system that they developed has reduced our costs to 30% and increased our efficiency in 40%. Laura Mitchell is undoubtedly one of the brightest minds I've ever been pleased to know." The audience was absolutely silent. Laura hung up the video and spoke again. "But I didn't come here just to show numbers. I came to show something that can change the way you think about innovation." She signaled Daniel, who was behind the scenes. He typed something in the laptop. The screen behind Laura changed. A futuristic interface of artificial intelligence appeared. "This," Laura explained, "it's the beta version of our new general AI system. It can process data in real time, learn with human interactions, and create custom solutions in seconds." She paused and smiled. "And I'll show that now, live, in front of all of you." The audience was electrified. People took their cell phones to record. Laura pointed to the screen. "I'll ask someone from the audience to give me a real problem. Any data, related problem, logistics, market analysis, whatever, and AI will solve on time." Silence. Then a man raised his hand. It was Robert, the gray-haired man who had been rude to Laura on table 12. "I have a problem," he said, the skeptical voice. "My company works with distribution of pharmaceutical products. We have 240 delivery points in 3 states. Our biggest challenge is to optimize routes to reduce fuel costs without compromising deadlines." Laura nodded. "Perfect. Can you give me the basic numbers? Number of vehicles, average consumption, distances?" Robert hesitated but ended up providing the data. Laura typed everything at the AI interface. 10 seconds, 15, 20, and then the screen displayed the result. An interactive map with optimized routes, cost tables, economy projections. "According to the system," Laura read aloud, "you can reduce your fuel costs by 22% reorganizing the routes in this way, and yet keep the deadlines of delivery within the expected." Robert was gaping. The audience exploded in applause. Laura didn't smile, just continued. "Someone more?" Another hand got up, and another, and another. During the next 5 minutes, Laura solved 4 different problems, all live, all with surgical accuracy. With each answer, the applause became higher. Jonathan Hayes was pale. He had stopped drinking, stopped to talk, just watched, unbelieving. When Laura ended, the audience rose in an ovation. She waited for the silence to come back. "I know many of you judged me today. Some of you laughed. Some thought I didn't deserve to be here." She looked straight at Marcus, who was leaning against the back wall, a red face of shame. "And all right, because I already tasted what I needed to prove, not for you, to myself." Laura paused. "Innovation does not come from appearances. It doesn't come from who looks more confident or more beautiful. It comes from those who work, who insists, from those who refuse to give up even when the whole world says you are not enough." The audience was hypnotized. Then, The next time you look at someone and decide in 5 seconds what this person is able to do, remember, you may be missing the greatest opportunity of your lives. Laura turned off the microphone and left the stage. The ovation was deafening. People got up, they applauded, shouted. Jonathan Hayes remained sitting, his face buried in his hands. Marcus left the hall without looking back, and Laura Mitchell, the woman they tried to humiliate, walked back behind the scenes with their heads up. Sarah and Daniel were waiting for her with huge smiles. "You rocked," Sarah said, her eyes shining. Daniel just waved his thumb, unable to express emotion. Laura took a deep breath, letting the adrenaline escape. "It's over," she murmured. "Finally, it's over." But actually, it was just starting. In the 3 days following the presentation, Laura Mitchell's life has changed irreversibly. The morning after the event, she woke up with 517 notifications on her cell phone, emails, messages on LinkedIn, interview requests, proposals for partnerships. Companies that once ignored their emails now begged for meetings. Sarah entered Novatech's office with 2 coffees and a newspaper in her hands. "Did you see that?" she asked, throwing the newspaper at Laura's table. The headline said, "Novatech CEO steals the scene in Summit of Innovation with demonstrating revolutionary IA." Below was a picture of Laura on stage, serious, confident, commanding the attention of hundreds of people. Laura took the newspaper and read in silence. "They finally paid attention," she murmured. Sarah smiled. "It was no attention. It was recognition. You forced them to see what has always been in front of them." Laura put the newspaper aside and looked through the office window. Outside, the city boiled, people running to work, swing cars, life happening, and for the first time in years, Laura felt that she was finally part of that, not like a strange trying to prove its value, but as someone who already knew exactly who it was. That afternoon, Laura received an unexpected call. It was Richard, the event manager. "Mrs. Mitchell, I wanted to apologize personally for what happened at the entrance. Marcus's behavior was unacceptable." Laura was silent for a few seconds. "And what happened to him?" Richard hesitated. "He was fired. We cannot tolerate this kind of conduct." Laura nodded, even though she knew he couldn't see her. "I understand. Thank you for informing me." Richard continued nervously. "We would also like to invite her to be the main speaker in the next summit, with all costs covered and generous compensation, of course." Laura smiled lightly. "I am going to think." She hung up before he could insist. Sarah, who was listening to the conversation, raised an eyebrow. "Will you accept it?" Laura shrugged. "Perhaps. Or maybe I organize my own event. No arrogant porters at the entrance." Sarah laughed loudly. "I would love to see that." 2 weeks later, Laura was at a meeting with executives from one of the largest technology companies in the country. The room was huge. Mahogany table, leather chairs, panoramic view for Manhattan. Executives listened attentive while Laura presented Novatech's proposal for their systems. When she finished, the company's CEO, a 60-year-old man, with white hair and air of the boss of it, leaned forward. "Mrs. Mitchell, I watched her presentation at Summit, and I confess I was impressed." Laura nodded, polite. "Thanks," he continued. "But I have a question. Why have you never sought our company before? We could have closed this partnership for years." Laura smiled, but there was something sharp in that smile. "I searched. 3 times, actually. I sent detailed proposals, tried to schedule meetings. Every time I was ignored." The CEO paled. I didn't know." Laura got up, taking her documents. "Now you know. And now if you want to work with me, you will have to work hard." She left the room under astonished looks. Sarah, who was waiting in the hall, held her laughter. "You are relentless." Laura smiled. "I learned the worst possible way." That night, Laura returned home and found a box at the door. There was no sender, just one card on top. She opened the card. "Congratulations on the presentation. You deserved every second of that stage. Jonathan Hayes." Laura frowned and opened the box. Inside, there was an expensive wine bottle and a handwritten note. "I judged you unfairly, and I paid the price for it. My company lost 3 customers after your speech. They wanted to work with someone who really understood innovation. I hope you will give me a chance to learn from you one day." Laura read the ticket twice. Then he put the bottle back in the box and left at the entrance of the building with a message. "For those who need more than me." She climbed to the apartment without looking back. 3 months later, Novatech Solutions announced its biggest achievement so far, a $200 million contract with a global hospital network to implement AI systems in medical diagnoses. The news stamped the covers of the country's leading business newspapers. Laura was invited to give interviews on TV shows, podcasts, magazines, and in each interview she repeated the same message. Innovation has no look. It has no weight. There is no genre. Innovation comes from those who work, who insists, who refuses to accept the not as a final response. Sarah watched from home with tears in her eyes. Daniel, who hated spotlight, watched hidden in the office, smiling discreetly. And Marcus, the security guard who tried to stop Laura from entering the event, watched a small apartment in New Jersey, unemployed with the weight of shame on her shoulders. He had tried to apologize by email. Laura never answered, because some lessons need to be learned in silence. A year after the Grand Sapphire Hotel incident, Laura was invited to give the opening talk of an international technology conference in San Francisco. When she took the stage, the whole audience got up in applause, not because she was famous, but because it represented something bigger, and she represented all the people who were underestimated, ignored, ridiculed. She represented living proof that arrogance always loses to persistence. Laura looked at the audience and began, "A year ago I was standing at the door of an event, being humiliated by a security guard who decided, in 5 seconds, that I didn't deserve to be there." The audience was silent. "Today, I'm here, in front of thousands of you. And do you know what changed?" She paused. "Nothing. I'm still the same person, the same woman, with the same body, with the same brilliant mind. The only difference is that now you are paying attention." Applause exploded. Laura smiled. "So, the next time you look at someone and decide that they are not enough, remember, the problem was never the person. The problem has always been your eyes." When she finished, the ovation lasted 5 minutes. Laura came down from the stage and found Sarah and Daniel backstage. "How it was?" Sarah asked, smiling. Laura hugged them both. "Perfect. It was perfect." And for the first time in her life, Laura Mitchell wasn't proving anything. She was just being who she always was, bright, resilient, unstoppable. And no one, absolutely no one, could take that away from her. Yeah, the best revenge has always been, and always will be, success. If you like this story, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss the next ones. Until next time.